seconds to comply.
I think you'd better do what he says, Mr. Kenny.
You have 60 seconds to comply. This is minute 9.
Part man.
Part machine, all pod. This minute begins with the old man saying, "Life in the city again," and ends with Dick Jones saying, "As you know, we've entered into a contract with the city to run local law enforcement."
Yeah, this is don't want to say it's a bit dull. There's actually a little bit in here, but yeah, this is pretty much setup. A lot of setup.
Yeah, there's interesting bits and pieces, and just talking about how we have a corporation that is in control
of a city, essentially.
the public sector of law enforcement, of all those things. And I mean, I don't know enough about that sort of stuff about government and politics, but it would be really interesting to know, where do we draw the line and why? Because I'm a bit of a nutrition and food nerd, and looking into the history of how we've distributed food around the world throughout history, sometimes it's in the private sector, sometimes it's in the public sector, and that's why, like, China, I think it was, really screwed themselves over because they made food production a private thing and they had to make it a public thing again, or something. I have to look it up again, but yeah, it's a very delicate balance.
This has always been a kind of that balancing act regarding, well, at least in modern times, especially after the 80s, when particular people who do get criticized, in this particularly some actors who became presidents. That's never happened ever again. Someone who's acted becoming a president and becoming trash and ruining the place. Yeah, there's a lot of deregulation of, really, in my opinion, well needed regulations in place to stop a lot of hypercapitalism that we are still dealing with today. And I guess to a certain degree, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the things like the pop culture we have because of some of these things. I mean, literally the 80s cartoons existed to sell toys because they couldn't advertise the toys. So it was a way around that.
Without rampant capitalism, we wouldn't have Transformers.
Well, at least we wouldn't have Transformers G1, the cartoon, and all the glory that is Peter Cullen. God, I always get these names wrong, don't I?
Yeah, it's Peter Cullen.
Peter Cullen and Frank Welker. Peter Cullen, Frank Welker. I usually swap the first names around.
Right. You don't trust yourself anymore.
I never trust myself when it comes to names anymore. This podcast has taught me that. And I think that's why I think RoboCop really does stand out, because at least this one, it is a very deep cut at corporate power structure. And the funny thing is, real life has come to resemble this.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part.
OCP dragging people off the street in vans, probably.
Yeah. The Monday America is starting to look a little bit too much like old Detroit all over the country.
Yeah. So, top of the minute, you have the old man giving his little speech about, we must cleanse the cancer. And then Bob Morton starts clapping enthusiastically.
Yeah.
And then everyone else slowly joins in.
Well, he has to look at Johnson first, kind of that thing of like, don't back me up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only really after Johnson kind of like chips in and everyone else. You think a room full of suckasses would do it anyway.
I know, they'd be trained like dogs.
Yeah.
And then Dick goes up to give a presentation, and then you got this weird little exchange between the old man and Morton. He kind of stares Morton down a little bit, and you're not really sure what's going on.
Well, no, I was looking back at it. The old man is actually looking at Dick, but Morton is looking at the old man. And I was getting a little bit of Careless Whisper vibes there going. It was either that or Baker Street. I thought Careless Whisper just works a little bit better.
Maybe. But yes, the presentation is just basically about how OCP is involved in hospitals and prisons and space exploration, which in the real world are also becoming privatized, and that's terrifying.
Well, here's the thing. So going back to the shifts in the tax structure, in the book it says something slightly different. So instead of saying, I think it's time we gave something back, the old man actually says, I think it's about time we give them a helping hand. The sooner they take old Detroit out of the headlines, the faster we can build, which actually makes it a little bit more sinister. I think they must have tried to lighten it up a little bit, because I think in this movie the old man is a little bit more of a sympathetic character, because Dick Jones is set up as the big bad of the corporation. He is the symbol of the evil corporation killing everything.
Yeah, the old man, well, we'll see more of him throughout these next few minutes. But yeah,
Yeah.
I never got a solid read on him, or I didn't get that
Hmm.
impression that he's the big bad, and
No.
he's not the Darth Sidious here.
Yeah, he definitely has more of that in. Or at least I think he has more of a direct hand in the events of RoboCop 2,
Hmm.
like comparative to this one, where it's that thing where the old man's just giving the nod,
Yeah.
not necessarily directing the play. I'm not sure if that's something that I just made a conscious decision to do, at least in the second one, but I think in this one it's just that thing of that we're just focused on Dick Jones and Bob Morton. And even in the audio commentary, they call Morton the protagonist, at least in the corporate sense, and Dick Jones as the antagonist in the corporate sense, which, as I was listening to that, I thought that fits in well with Maggie Mae Fish's idea of the duality within this movie.
Mm.
And I never thought about it that way, but it's pretty true. I don't think Bob Morton is a protagonist in the movie itself,
Yeah.
but as a direct response to Dick Jones, I think that works actually quite well.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work out well for him, but
There is a sense of duality and symmetry throughout this film, and we'll get into that at some point. I think it probably makes more sense to do it at the end, but there is an article that goes way in depth about how RoboCop is essentially the perfect, I think it's called a chiasmus. It's a perfectly symmetrical film.
Oh, okay. No idea. I guess we could link the article, but yeah, if it's something we can study towards the end,
Yeah.
definitely.
We can put it in the footnotes for advanced reading.
Yeah.
Very advanced.
I think one of the actual strong points of this movie is that it's not a complex story. It's quite simplistic in the sense of it's not overly convoluted. They set up the premise, they execute the premise. They set up the bad guys, or the dual bad guys in this movie.
Mm.
It's not trying to justify itself, and we'll definitely talk about more of that in regards to the remake.
Well, this is something I'm wrapping up Prometheus by minute, and I think about this a lot with Prometheus in terms of Alien is so grounded and believable.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple, because we're not overloaded with information. It's not trying to wow us. It's just a lot of people giving very naturalistic performances. Very little happens, but because it's so stripped down, you react more to those little moments of tension. And so even just a quiet conversation between Ash and Ripley can become really intense. Whereas Prometheus is just everything in the kitchen sink. It's like a fucking Transformers movie. It's just everything in your face all the time.
It's just overly complicated.
Overly complicated. It prevents you from connecting to the story, these characters. Prevents you from seeing it as real. Whereas everything about RoboCop and the way it's performed and everything about it, even though it is so over the top in some ways and satirical, it's also quite grounded, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with, I think I spoke about this on your podcast, is that I think that Prometheus was trying to say a lot, but it ended up saying nothing. It's like, we want to try and explain the backstory of everything. You did need to do that,
Yeah, I mean, I know what that's like when you write and you sort of you have this whole, I don't know, like your inspiration board, or you have a list of things like, oh yeah, and these themes would be really interesting. I want to explore these themes and all the themes, and it's like, okay, yeah. But when you get further down into that writing process, what should happen is you start stripping things back and going, this is the core of the story.
Editing people.
There's no core to either the RoboCop remake or Prometheus. I think at least Prometheus wanted to say something. It has so many things, but it has no core. It's almost like, it's like a planet. The planet needs a core. If you don't have a core, then it's just a bunch of rocks floating in space.
Yeah. Although I was going to say, the problem with that theory is that rocks tend to then group together and then turn into a planet, but that's a different story.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have enough mass. It doesn't have enough substance to actually become anything other than asteroids.
It's the difference between a planet and a ring, I guess, which is just basically...
Thanks, Neil deGrasse Tyson, fucking ruining my analogy there. Well, actually...
So what we're saying is basically, this movie is a nice, chunky planet in the Goldilocks zone, and the remake is basically an asteroid field, which is just basically a giant hole in space.
Yeah.
That's actually a good analogy. This movie is just a complete hole.
Yeah, it's just a void with the occasional dangerous rock. It's going to ruin your day.
Yeah, just one splinters off and just, threatens planet-wide destruction and kills dinosaurs.
Purity of it. A meteor. I don't know why it suddenly reminded of Ultron.
This is one of those movies that people just don't think about as really being saying something. And I think it's one of those things where this is one of those scenes where you could just dismiss it. Or this miniature should say, you could just dismiss it as, I just say, nothing really happens. It's all set up. But it's really kind of being subtle in its delivery. I said, like, the whole thing of, like, it sets up Morton's ambition.
Yeah.
I do play it off as, like, he's giving the old man sexy eyes, but you can almost see that thing where he's just there going, I've got to get my shot. And I think that plays off. This is the setup for the playoff when Morton goes after the old man after the failed Ed 209 test.
This movie is one I think about a lot when I consider, this idea of, I guess it's cultural snobbery, weird books or movies or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's this idea of, the classic, everyone's got to read Moby Dick, everyone's got to read, all those sorts of ones. And it's just, I got to this point where I realized, no, they're fucking boring. They're old. They're not relatable to me. I'm not going to get anything out of it. And I think stories should entertain. It should not be a chore. It should speak to you on a personal level. And I think RoboCop is the perfect example of a movie that can be all the things you love, the good, dumb, schlocky action, sci-fi bullshit, but also it's using that to great effect. It's in the hands of some very intelligent people. And I wish we had more stuff like this.
Yes, I keep trying to examine the underlying message of Bloodshot, but it just turns out to be Vin Diesel just wants to look cool in explosions.
How long have I been writing my video essay about Transformers? I basically took that concept and just went full 100% in. I just went, let's look at the dumbest film franchise and try to do some actual analysis on it. And I hate myself.
Let's be brutally honest. This movie started off as a dumb movie. They literally, I don't think we've actually spoken about this. I'm probably just going to bring up the Wikipedia quickly.
Oh yeah, we haven't done the behind the scenes, the origins, if you will.
Well, I can't remember. It was okay. So I believe Ed Neumeier and the guy who I always forget because he's not in the audio commentary, Michael Miner. I believe they both had a script that was roughly the same thing. I think they were both inspired by. I know Ed Neumeier specifically, I think, was inspired by Blade Runner, and he had the idea of. I've got the quote here. It's about a cop hunting robots.
Yeah,
and I think they got together, and that's where you get the merging of RoboCop as a script. But I think it's one of those things where I think they just wrote this as just a dumb, schlocky, fun movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that after time they just started working with it, and then it became a bit more of an idea that there was some weight behind it. And I think Verhoeven also added to that as well.
I love when people really go for it in terms of just, yes, this is a ridiculous concept, but we're going to make you believe in it. You're going to be so invested 100%. And the other thing that comes to mind is, way back in the day, do you remember the Beauty and the Beast TV show with Ron Perlman?
Oh, God, I have not watched that since it was literally airing. I remember enjoying it. Because that was, what's her face? Linda Hamilton, wasn't it, as well?
Hell yeah. And it was great, and I just got so invested in it. And then someone else would walk in while I was watching it, and I realized, oh yeah, this is fucking insane. Like, the dude is like a big lion man, but you forgot. You were just so in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it holds up now, but RoboCop's definitely that thing of, this is a man who's walking around like at 1 kilometer per hour, and he is very inefficient, but you don't care. You're just so in it.
But the movie itself, it doesn't portray RoboCop in concept, in cinematography, as anything but kind of just dead serious. I mean, there's satire at play. As kind of weird as it is, RoboCop is dealt seriously. He has pathos. He has something that's relatable. And I think also that's also through Peter Well's performance as well. He adds something to that.
So much tragedy to him. And
if it was played tongue-in-cheek, it wouldn't work. At least not in this film.
It's one of those things like cybernetics, becoming a cyborg. It's probably not out like totally outside of the realm of possibility,
No, no,
but
no,
I
no.
think just within this setting and this time period, you go,
Yeah.
yeah, this is fascinating. But you know what it reminds me of is the first Superman movie, just in terms of.
Okay.
You will believe a man can fly. You got me to watch that movie. I had not seen the original Superman,
Yeah.
and it's just
You're welcome.
enchanting. It absolutely is.
I will defend that movie to my dying day.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I heard a lot of people go, "Oh man, it's so boring. It's so dated. It's so sad." It's like, no, no, no. Forget all that. Just look at the movie. Look at the pacing. Look at the storytelling. It is a masterpiece.
It really is.
Yeah, it's a bit cheesy, but so what?
You believe in it, and I think that's
Yes.
something we are sadly lacking in a lot of things. I mean, I think the MCU does well. They actually want you to be invested in these characters.
Yeah.
That's the trick. That's how they get
It's
you.
a character-driven series more than it is a plot-driven series.
Yeah, but for the most part, I feel like a lot of stories don't let you get lost in the fantasy of it. You're
Yeah.
so aware that, oh yeah, this is a big blockbuster, same old bullshit.
Well, even when you've got literally the same writers on a movie and they remake it and they somehow drop the ball in such a major way.
Kurtzman.
Yeah, I was trying not to
I know. I was like, how long is it before we actually bring up Alex Kurtzman?
I'm not going to waste the track drop on that person.
No,
I'm going to
not worth it.
slide over it. No, I was just going to say is that's I think the problem with a lot of modern day writing is that I think some of these people look at story as a thing that just has to be there, not something that has to be integral to the part. Like,
It's kind of funny how movies, the story isn't important anymore.
yes, like beginning, middle, end,
Yes.
plot beats, middle arcs, the hero's tale. These are reasons why these stories work in ways, especially ways that are unfamiliar, because they work.
Hmm.
When you're just there going, we're just going to throw a lot of things at the wall and then never pay any of them off, J.J. Abrams, then we kind of lose that.
Jam Abrams. That's what I've come to.
Jabrams.
I don't know why I've come to call him that, but I don't know. It's fun.
I still prefer Jar Jar Abrams.
Jar Jar, yeah. Either way.
I was going to turn up to the Force Awakens. I was going to turn up to that in my Star Trek uniform.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was in the wrong country at the time, and I just built a Jack Porkins costume. So,
Shame.
I must admit, I really wish I'd have known going in how badly Rise of Skywalker is, because then I would have just done that.
Oof, yeah. And I love the Last Jedi. The Last Jedi
Yeah.
is my favorite Star Wars movie ever. But
it might have a plot progression. That's really good.
Oh,
Funny that.
story arcs. Oh,
Exactly.
my God, character development. Yeah.
Yes, character arcs, where the character is different from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, and they're not just literally the same person that doesn't change or learn a lesson or anything.
We're just two grumpy old men.
Yeah.
It was better back in my day, in the 90s, in the early 2000s.
You know, the grumpy old men movies had more of a plot progression than these.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, those movies are great.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like, high art, but man, they were funny.
Yeah.
That's something I've been mulling on just recently, is also the idea that I think I was talking about it the other day, is that comedy sometimes gets dismissed. I think it's funny because comedy can do a lot, and this movie has a lot of comedy in it, but nobody really thinks of it as a comedic movie.
No, not really.
They remember the violence more than they remember kind of the wit and the satire.
Yeah, and it's not quite like how horror sometimes balances Stephen King's It definitely has a lot of humor, but that hits different than the way RoboCop does humor. And I just find humor quite interesting because it's a thing that's almost impossible to study objectively.
Well, if you want to have a comedy podcast, you go listen to There's Kong Power into the Minute.
Yes. Every time a friend asks for recommendations of podcasts, I just realize all my podcasts are just really obsessively detailed explorations of one movie. Who the hell would do that?
I think it's a great exercise. I mean, that's what I think. I was against it initially because I was like, I don't think I've got anything to say. And honestly, sometimes recording Kung Pao, I know I have nothing to say.
Yep.
I just make it up as I go on. As a mental exercise in analysis, I think it's a really cool idea.
I think if you love a movie enough, it's really nice to spend the next year, maybe
Mm,
more, depending on how long it takes you to listen to a podcast, that
yeah,
you can live in this world for a little while and just think about it more.
yeah.
Because there are movies I really love, but after you watch the movie, oh, that's it. There's no more coverage of it. I want to think about it more, but I can't.
I do love it when a movie, or at least a world that is in a movie, can sometimes will just stick in your mind. I think that's why I do genuinely love Star Trek. Now we can get the drop in.
Yeah.
Well, shit. It's exactly what I was hoping to spare you from.
This wasn't me crowbarring in. I was just thinking, have you watched the latest episode of Disco? It's the latest episode, the first episode of season 3, episode 1.
No.
Okay.
Jam Jams would have to pay me to watch it.
Okay, so I watched the first episode of Lower Decks, and I noped out of that because it was just there going, oh, it's just fucking Rick and Morty.
Yep.
The reason I watched the first episode of season 3 of Disco, because I always stated that when they did this whole time traveling thing, I thought this is actually probably the perfect opportunity to reboot the series, or at least do a soft reboot of the series, and go exploring. This is a series called Discovery.
I know. It's not like it's Deep Space Nine where, it's on a freaking space station, so they're not really out there exploring. No.
Yeah, but Deep Space Nine is about the internal exploration as opposed to the external inspiration. So it fits well within the
Yeah.
within the concept of Star Trek.
We're probably going on a bit of a tangent.
That's fine. We've got to. This episode's gonna be like 10 minutes long. Otherwise, it's like,
I know.
yeah, it's just a couple of guys sitting at a table talking.
Yeah. I actually we've got script. No, novelization and audio commentary, or did we do that already?
I've done a bit of the book. I actually got something on the audio commentary. I'll get to the point where I was trying to say.
Okay.
I think that's why I also like the world building that happens in RoboCop as well, because it's interesting that we've got this take on what the future could be like. And yes, Star Trek's optimism, space socialism, space communism, whatever you want to call it. Whereas what we've got here is this dystopian, but it's also like the modern day, well, at least the modern day for like the last 40 odd years, idea of capitalism trying to take over the government in America, at least. It's usually the media over here with fucking Murdoch.
Yep.
But the idea of the American capitalist system becoming more and more entrenched within public policy, and that is a thing that's happening. And you get this result where you essentially have a corporation trying to destroy a city so they can build their own big dick monument.
Yeah.
Is very compelling. And also, you just kind of go, I can see that happening. So I think it's got some great world building just in and of itself. And this whole section is setting up this idea of the clash between the corporation versus the people.
I didn't realize until we reviewed this 1 minute at a time that just a very subtle thing, just little bits of dialogue here and there, imply a very scary dystopian world. Just like, the privatization of these industries and just the general callousness of this world.
So here's the commentary bit I wanted to point out. Enya Meyer says, I'll try and quote this as much as possible. Otherwise, I'll just put the drop in. This is a sort of reaction to Ronald Reagan's world when we made this film. The privatization. The funny thing is, he stuffed this up in the recording as well. The privatization of hospitals and jails and police and all businesses that OCP is into. This is like all that stuff on the screen. That is a response to Ronald Reagan and the privatization, the corporatization of the American system. Anyone who tells you that this movie does not have subtext or anything to say are so full of themselves. This is perfect satire.
Yeah, I've been meaning to dig into reviews at the time, but I think it kind of went over some critics' heads. I do think they dismissed it as, it's just, another dumb sci-fi movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to say I picked up on this as a kid. I think I definitely picked up on more of the, RoboCop shoot bad guy vibe because, I was like 10 at the time. I was redoing the mental math, and I watched this in 1989, not 1987, like I stated on a previous podcast.
Yeah.
So I would have been about 10. And I think this is it's probably no movie you should watch a 10-year-old, but you cut down a bit of the violence. It's a perfect 10-year-old film.
Mm.
And I think it's only watching it later on. I think when I picked
That's
this up
why
on-
they made toys and cartoons and stuff, because
But they made them like almost like 5-6 years later. This didn't get really PG-ified until RoboCop 3. And at that point, kids had started to pick up on this. And that's when the toyification of RoboCop happened.
Yeah, like the, what do you call it, more overt things, the imagery, the more obvious concept.
They introduced a kid character into number 3 as the sidekick, like the little girl who's also the master hacker thing, and Jesus.
It's that divide between presentation and context, or subtext, I should say. So context versus subtext, rather.
Yeah.
Where, I think the way RoboCop is presented, a lot of people just cannot get past that. It looks one way, but it's judging a book by its cover. It's that idea of, but it looks this way, so it can't have brains,
Yeah, heaven forbid it actually has a message or a subtext. And it still amazes me to this day how many people, especially when people get really pissy when people analyze a piece of pop culture, especially pop culture, where it's just like, it's just a fun movie, it has nothing to say. But what if it does have something to say? Shouldn't we talk about the things?
Unless...
Yeah, there's plenty of movies that have nothing to say, especially remakes that really don't have anything to say. A movie like this, which is so baked in with especially a corporate message, or at least a corporate critique, it is subtle, but at the same time, if you're paying attention, you spot that. And I think this movie should probably do better now if it came out, because it does have lots to say. We deal with so much corporate bullshit nowadays that this movie should resonate a lot more. And then we start getting into and we should rise up against them in the moments. Come on, comrades, let's rise up and kick the corporate pigs out.
Yeah, I'd love to see how this RoboCop would have done if it was made now. Yeah,
I don't know. I guess this is why I like the idea of continuing on a story like this. I think it still has something to say. I'm just not sure. Again, I have to go by my gut feeling and saying, why do we need a new version of the same story when we've got the old story?
Yeah, I just heard that they're doing a sequel to The Last Starfighter. They're not doing a reboot or a remake. They're doing a sequel. And then we've got Bill and Ted did another sequel.
Yeah.
And those intrigue me, because I think that shows more than anything evolution and progress, where a reboot or a remake is just, here's that thing, we're just doing it again. Here's another. It's the same thing we've been doing in theater.
We're banking on the nostalgia. That's what it's doing.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing we've been doing in theater. So I don't want to dismiss it entirely, but that idea of, we're doing another version of Shakespeare, we're doing another version of, I can't think of anything else right now, but yeah.
A lot of theatre productions will try and put a spin on things. They try and do different ways. I think that's the difference between a theatre performance, is that it's not something that's set in stone. There's also a small degree of, let's face it, a small degree of, is this going to get fucked up? Someone going to fall and stuff like that. I think there's always a degree of danger to a theatre performance.
That's the thing about, I think about this a lot, is why are we more comfortable with watching a million different versions of Shakespeare, or what's his name? George Bernard Shaw. All of his plays. Why are we okay with that? But when it comes to films, like, another one. And I think
there's also a culture with theatre, and also I think the thing with theatre is that you can't just pull off, a theatre production off the shelf and pop it in and watch it.
Well, yeah. So there is that. It's malleability. It's this disposability. It's finite, but also
it's what movies used to be.
I think there is something about just making something into a movie that makes it feel more concrete. Like, this is how it is. This is canonical. This is, whereas, and the other thing is also copyright, our best friend copyright, where it's like, anyone can do another Midsummer Night's Dream. But if you wanted to, I don't know, say improve upon Michael Bay's vision of Transformers, you can't, because it's owned by 6 different massive corporations. Good luck.
I am totally down for public domain being a thing and having people being able to explore. I think that's the other thing is that when it comes to like a remake of something that's classic, like something like RoboCop, it's because a suit wants to make money with zero effort.
Mhm.
Usually, when it comes to a soft reboot or a sequel or something along those lines, a Tron Legacy or a Blade Runner 2049, it's usually because someone is there going, I've got an idea of and I want to continue the stories. I want to be faithful to the.
Yeah, and those are some of my favorite movies, and I'm doing podcasts on them. So yeah.
I wasn't trying to pander. They're literally the two things I can think of at the top of my head where it really is about a person with a passion.
Mm.
And I'm going to be brutally honest here. And in those two examples, you got a end product where one is like really phenomenally good, and one of them is like not necessarily great.
But there was at least someone really was trying to make something.
Exactly. I appreciate the passion
Mm.
of someone trying to do something like that, rather than, oh, Howard Ramis has died. Let's go and announce the remake of one of his greatest films 2 weeks later.
Classy.
That really pissed me off. That movie had a lot of problems before a single frame of footage was ever shot.
Did we want to move on to gaslighting RoboCop?
Alex, how do you feel?
I feel fine, Dr. Morton.
This minute begins with Pat Novak saying Herbert Dreyfus and ends with Murphy entering the police station with the RoboCop theme playing.
Oh God, rewatching that. I forgot that they did the title drop the way they did. Just,
I hate it.
wow.
It is so undeserved because I mean the original RoboCop movie does not use the RoboCop theme until it's actually fucking earned. Until
yes,
Murphy actually goes full RoboCop and you're just like, fuck yeah, I believe in this.
Let's analyze the timelines of how they've synced up at this point.
Mm.
We've had 9 minutes of a plot with characters we really don't need or need to empathize with to get to this point where finally meeting the protagonist.
Yeah, we had Sam Jackson beating us over the head with, oh, this senator, he's old-fashioned and he fears what he doesn't understand, robophobic America, right?
So let me get to my line, because my line is, Sam Jax lays out the classic line that many hack writers use now. Many hack writers overuse now. They fear what they don't understand.
So we shouldn't be afraid of the giant robot that just killed a small boy on national television.
We need to trust these robots, even though they just seen them murder a child.
It is absurd, but not in a way that implies that the story's in on the joke. It's like, and I don't even know how to word it, but when you see it where, we're laughing at it, we're not laughing with it. It doesn't seem to understand what it's doing.
I agree 100%. What the hell are they thinking?
Oh my god, this minute actually is probably the cringiest because of all of this, and then you slap the RoboCop theme because it's memorable. It's an iconic thing. This is the thing you remember. The thing you remember. Remember it.
Oh jeez! I'm rewatching this. I was just like, oh yeah, that's right. This is probably one of the reasons I really hated this movie when I first watched it.
Yeah, and we
like,
still.
What the fuck did I just sit through?
No, actually, we still have not been shown Murphy in this fucking movie.
We've not seen any character except Michael Keaton for like a frame.
Yes, we see the back of Murphy, and that's about it. And also, he's acting like an asshole, but we'll get into that in the next minute.
I was there going, hang on, that's right. This is Rick Flag. He's playing Rick Flag, except that he bent time and space.
So I think this is a masterclass on pacing, where by now, 9 minutes into the movie, we've established all our major players except for... Well, actually, no, we have. We've
established Broderick as well in the news segment.
Yeah. So there's no one else we need to be introduced to. That's it.
Exactly.
We know everything that's going on. We know the whole situation. We know the world building. Instead, we've wasted all this time in the new RoboCop movie with just shouting about shit that actually will not impact the plot. It almost came from another movie.
Yeah, so in just doing the mental math, I think it's roughly about minute 14 or 15 of the good movie is when we finally start to see the inciting incident, which is the car chase between Murphy Lewis and the Broderick gang.
Hmm.
This is probably the slowest part of the film, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
It's the boardroom scene, but it's also so iconic that it's like, as we talked about previously, sometimes this just sticks in your head as one of the things of like, oh, this is how the movie opens.
I feel like structure is a thing we are not seeing a lot of good examples
Yes.
of in modern cinema. And I don't
Mm.
know what. I mean, part of it, see, I've got this theory that maybe because I know India does, but I think China does as well, they would prefer a longer movie because it feels like it's more value for money. It's more of a night out for them. So I think they are padding out some of these movies. And then it feels like, well, the Transformers movies are especially an egregious example of this, where you've actually got 3 different plots that never actually line up or come together in any way. It's just, here's 1 hour of one idea, here's another hour of another idea, and then we're going to finish it with just lots of explosions and shooting and screaming.
I'm trying to remember how the plot lines converge in the first Bayformers film, and I believe it literally happens right at the end where the characters pretty much all meet roughly in the big war scene. Some of the characters meet up in I think was it Egypt, where they find the...
No, that's the second one. So the first one...
No, I've not seen the second one. That's the thing. I can't tell you what happened to the second one.
I know. Well, I've just been watching them and taking notes. But yes, the first one, they meet up at Hoover Dam, and that's where the big battle is, and Megatron's resurrected, and all the shit happens. Yeah.
Oh, God, because they have the MacGuffin that I can never remember. It's like both the cube thing and...
Revenge of the Fallen
off your brain.
Complete mess. But, it's not that a longer movie is necessarily a worse movie, but I think what we're getting, especially with this RoboCop, I think this RoboCop remake, last time I checked, I think it was longer than the original.
It is. I've done the math. It's about 15 minutes longer.
And it doesn't have anything to say. Whereas Lawrence of Arabia is a favorite movie of mine, and I've watched it many times. And I'm always looking at it like, I'm fascinated by its structure.
Yeah.
And I watch it over and over again, and I try to see, where would I cut it down? How would you make this into a 90-minute movie? You can't.
It is a great editing exercise to do mentally. What is the fluff I can pull out and still make a cohesive film?
But there's just, because it's a character study, because it is this epic journey, there is just so much, and it's this beautiful portrait that I wouldn't touch. There is literally not a single scene, except maybe the rape scene, that I would pull out of there.
Those are always the scenes where it's like, do you really need this? And let's face it, most rape scenes, you don't, unless it's...
No, because it never comes up again.
Yeah, it's weird that. And yes, Verhoeven, as I've pointed out, does use it. No, the point I was going to make is, I can tell you off the top of my head, there's a 3.5-hour film that I think is enjoyable throughout. It's got great pacing. I struggled to think of any way I could cut that down and it would still make cohesive sense. Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, Avengers Endgame and Infinity War.
There's probably some bits you can cut out of Infinity War, I'll be brutally honest, but at the same time, Endgame for a 3.5-hour movie is tight. And you can see why they could not cut it down. That was pretty much probably the lightest cut they ever could make.
Fury Road is 2 hours.
Yes.
Like, what would you take out of Fury Road? It's just non-stop.
Can't think of a single thing.
Pulse-pounding freaking action. Holy shit. It doesn't... It's not unrelenting.
I met someone who said that Fury Road was a boring film where nothing happened, and I was just like, gobsmacked.
That is one of those opinions where you just go, no, I'm sorry. That's not true.
What the fuck were you watching? The title screen?
Yeah. Like, were you watching on a DVD and the DVD was busted and so you were just watching the menu the whole time?
Just free-phrasing Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, one of those opinions where you just go, sorry, you've just taken all the breath out of my lungs. I'm winded. I need a second to recover.
Yeah, it was almost a thing. I'm like going, I think probably the slowest Mad Max movie ever made was Mad Max. yeah, that's kind of the point of that movie. It wasn't an action film. It was basically a drama.
I could understand, if you went in to see Drive and you
Yeah.
were like, that was so boring, because actually that did happen. It was marketed completely wrong. It was marketed as, oh, Ryan Gosling is this cool stunt driver guy, getaway driver, it's
Yeah.
going to be so cool. And yeah, apparently people were in the audience, shouting out, boring, and walking
Yeah.
out. And it's just like, it's an amazing movie, but it's not that movie. If you're going in looking for that, you're going to be disappointed.
I'm just trying to remember if I've actually seen the original theatrical trailer for RoboCop. I just don't recall.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's one of those movies I just saw before I saw the trailer.
2 hours later.
I think so. My overall thoughts are the 2014 trailer is very typical of what you expect.
Yeah.
Very quick edits. So there's this sort of explosive flashes to the next scene. It's funny how they always have to shove in. By the way, there's romance in here. Like they got to have shots of him making out with his wife and stuff, which isn't really in there. And I don't know if that who is that selling that to. I always wonder.
I just realized in the first RoboCop movie trailer, the good RoboCop,
the original,
trailer,
yes,
no Lewis as well. No, they don't show the real badass. Probably because she would have upstaged RoboCop. Let's just be brutally honest.
Yeah, they tried putting her in, and then just everyone's like, "Oh,
She was just
that
too awesome.
that trailer about the Lady Cop movie, yeah, we want that." And they're like, "If it's not, it's about the RoboCop. No, we want the Lady Cop."
No, the Lady Cop is badass.
Hell, I would cosplay as Lewis. Man, I'd be fine with that. She's so cool.
Well, here's the thing: they couldn't contain the awesomeness that was Anne Lewis, so they had to turn her into a dude.
Yeah,
and
we'll get into remix Lewis when he shows up.
I know we're going to delve more into it, but yeah, just thinking back, the inciting incident of the RoboCop remake is also just weak sauce.
Lewis as a black man, I mean, I actually really like that actor, and I thought he could have been a really good RoboCop. But that could have been an interesting thing to explore, and something that I feel, and I've mentioned this before, that science fiction is an absolute pussy when it comes to discussing race. And I think robots have been used in black pop culture for a long time as a symbol of oppression, of control, of the lack of autonomy, no pun intended, of the body, like Janelle Monáe.
It's almost like there's a group of people who have experienced slavery.
Yeah.
And there's an analogous to slavery with robot servants.
Exactly. So the idea of this black man who dies and his body is just treated as property, and he is turned into this machine. And I think there's a lot of really powerful things you could draw out of that plot. The Ghost in the Shell remake could have also gone there, in terms of an Asian woman converted into the appearance of a white woman. And these are they are confronting issues. They are difficult issues to discuss. But I think science fiction has always been a medium for that, or should be.
Because I've been thinking about this a bit lately, because of the a few people keep bringing up, and it's always that thing of like, yes, I do agree what you said about the whole idea of how science fiction does treat race. The biggest problem with that is...
sorry, I was going to say, you could make RoboCop, but make it Get Out.
I think if I was going to do, not a sequel, but if I think I was going to do a remake, I think I probably would do that. I think I would mess around with those ideas. Let's be brutally honest. The reason why science fiction does skirt around a lot of these issues, or even like the idea of like using allegory, is because it was trying to talk about issues, but it still had to sell to a white audience.
True.
And it still was made by white people, because that was the only people that would make it, or at least it was being produced by white people. The studio executives were white people.
Yeah. It just reminded me of, in season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation, that really racist Africans in space episode. The worst. The worst episode of Star Trek, of any Star Trek ever made. Like, it's worse than anything that Alex Kurtzman's ever done. Oh my god.
There will be no treaty, no vaccine, and no Lieutenant Yao.
Yeah, see, that's a perfect example of how you need how not to do. It's, when you're discussing these issues, you need allegory, and that was literally just Africans in space. There was nothing to sort of soften the blow. It was just planet Africa, I guess.
A better race analogy. In retrospect, it's not really that great, at least for the topic they're trying to say, is the episode where you got the two in TOS, where you got the
Half black, half white.
half back. Okay,
Yeah.
I was trying to think. This is Frank Gershwin as who was the
Oh
Riddler.
yeah, the Riddler. Yeah.
I think Frank Gershwin's a highly underrated actor. He's brilliant.
Mm.
And he does really well for talking about race, but then it kind of drops the ball at the end when there's just really bad chase scene through the Enterprise, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It's supposed to be as much about race as it's about Australia's race, but it's also about the idea of war and how war just destroys things, and no one survives war.
Mm.
But it's trying to juggle these two balls, and it doesn't really work in the long run. But it also made people think about race at the time.
Yeah, and I think why that works is because if you try to make a movie or a story about a very specific conflict in the real world, then people can bring their own biases to it. It's like, oh well, but this country and their culture, they do this thing that I don't approve of, and they do. No, we don't want to get it. We just want to talk about the fact that having this kind of violent retaliation, between these two cultures is always wrong. It doesn't matter the specifics; it's always wrong.
Yeah, and this is why Navi should have been RoboCop.
Exactly. That would have been so cool. Honestly, I love the idea of this kid who's grown up in the Middle East, looks like he was born after 9/11. He has never known a time of peace and without American occupation. And that idea of him just having enough of this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then gets basically curb stomped by the literal embodiment of American imperialism.
Yeah, it is imperialism. Paternalism, maybe.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a better word, but it is essentially American colonialism, and we are going to police the planet, even though you've never wanted us to be there.
Yeah. Oh god, there's a lot of that in the Transformers movie, the Bayformers Transformers movie, where it's just, oh look, the kids love the soldier mans, and it's just like.
Okay, so there's a thing that's very recent. Speaking of that, in regards, this pretty much just goes away in the RoboCop remake. So we literally is probably the last chance we're ever going to really talk about the whole idea of this, at least in the gaslighting section. There is a Monday thing, definitely goes back as far as those Bayformer movies, where the US government would, if not give military hardware for free, they would sometimes pay studios to promote the military as the good guys.
Oh, yeah.
If the movie wasn't patriotic enough, or they didn't approve the script, they would pull the funding, they would pull any support they would do. That's why, a lot of movies, Marvel movies specifically, compared to the DC ones, they tend to have a lot less military in them because they don't get approved because they're not military friendly enough. However, Man of Steel, very pro-military, so that got the support of the US military services. It's propaganda.
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, it actually kind of ties into what I've been thinking about in terms of that, the golden age of science fiction was a time of, I guess it's low stakes in terms of you can write a story and it's published in this cheap little book.
Low stakes, high concept.
Yeah, low stakes, high concept, exactly. And you had these very intelligent, very innovative and original ideas, and yet it was dismissed as this trash. And now we make these billion-dollar science fiction films, and they are as dumb as things aimed at preschoolers. It has no substance. Look at Avatar. It is a billion-dollar movie, and it's the same. It's Pocahontas in space.
It has zero cultural impact beyond, look at this big special effect.
Yeah, tech demo. And I think that hasn't really gone away. You do occasionally get an Arrival, a Blade Runner 2049, but I do have this frustration with cinema. Cinema is this weird thing where, especially nowadays, it's so capitalistic. It's so much about appealing to the widest possible audience. It's very hard to have any sort of creative integrity anymore.
The international market is a gigantic factor in a lot of mainstream media. This is why a movie like Bayformers has no dialogue, realistically speaking. It's just action, action, action,
No, true.
action, action.
And then you look at the TV shows, so Transformers Prime, you look at the comic books, the IDW stuff, More Than Meets the Eye, and those are so praised for their writing and their intelligence, their nuance, way more than it would ever have to need to be, because these things are just cheap and disposable, or they're supposed to be. And yet they outshine these billion-dollar movies because they're not trying to appeal to some mass audience. It's just telling a good story.
And yeah, I kind of do miss. Here's the funny thing: The Matrix.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of it.
Yeah, you might have heard of it.
Might have been in the podcast for it.
Let's be brutally honest. I know hindsight's a bitch, but The Matrix wasn't supposed to be a blockbuster.
Oh, absolutely not.
It was relatively a low budget film. Okay, maybe a mid to low budget film.
Sort of moderate, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like I want to say. You know what? I'm just gonna Google the budget.
But it is one of the most original, innovative, and influential films of the 90s. It really...
Through there, $63 million film. A movie like this now would be...
200 million tends to be the average these days, yeah.
Yeah, but this was mostly about, that was mostly like special effects. It's not like they were paying big name actors. I mean, Keanu Reeves was in a kind of a slump at that time. Lawrence Fishburne wasn't huge. Carrie Ann Moss wasn't huge. Hugo Weaving had this thing coming up called Lord of the Rings, but, it wasn't really big outside of Australia.
I think he only just done Priscilla.
It wasn't a big thing. It was actually a perfect science fiction film. It was a mid to low budget film, developed with high concepts. It wasn't meant to be spectacular, but audiences freaking loved it. It was the perfect Hollywood movie making blockbuster because it was cheap to make, relatively speaking, and earned a buttload of money. It earned $500 million.
It just seems like it's lightning in a bottle. RoboCop and The Matrix do have a lot in common in terms of
trans allegory.
There's trans allegories, but there's also and questioning your reality and that kind of stuff. But it's just they could just be action movies with no substance. They very well could have just been yet another forgettable entry in an unending list that ends up on Red Letter Media, best of the worst. But yeah, they really went for it. There was a brain, there was a heart, there was a soul. And
I'd say with Matrix specifically, there was a philosophy behind it.
There was a philosophy, yeah, and it comes across and people pick up on that, and it ends up being something we reference to this day. I mean, a RoboCop reference or a Matrix reference is likely to show up in anything you watch even to this day, and you'll recognize it.
Yeah, it's still got a lot of surface level action and stuff like that, but you come for this one. It's one of those movies you probably come for the action, but what doesn't stay in your mind is the action scenes. What stays in your mind is the ideas that are presented in there. Yes, I know kung fu and all that stuff. It's like very mimetic and stuff like that. But
yeah, the things I'm more likely to remember are, you think that's air you're breathing? It's like, oh fuck.
Yes, I remember when I was watching that in the cinemas. I stopped breathing. I'm like, huh?
Oh yeah, I had a little panic attack and I was just like, I can't breathe. Oh god.
Oh, it wasn't a panic attack. It just was it just went on. I remember talking to my friends and they're like, "No, I didn't do that." And I just thought, okay.
You're suddenly aware of your breathing now, listener.
But that's literally a subconscious thing where you don't think about your breathing, and sometimes when you do, you go, "Oh shit, I apologize to anyone who's currently listening in this."
Yeah. Well, the fascinating thing is if you practice meditation enough, you can observe your breathing without controlling it, and that is the weirdest state to get into. It's a lot of fun.
So I just scrolled down and saw the note that Will Smith turned down the role of Nero to make Wild Wild West.
Yeah,
that was a decision.
Oh yeah, he jokes about that a lot. He's got a good sense of course, Will Smith.
I know.
And he's just like, man, best decision of my life.
I like Wild Wild West. It's just fun.
I think Wild Wild West is fun.
And on Wild Wild West Minute.
Oh, someone has to do that.
I do the Wild Wild West Minute, but I only do the minutes where Cartman is involved in the Wild Wild West song. With Selma Hayek. Is the hand.
Yeah, seeing The Matrix, I kind of saw a bit of it when I was 7, when it first come out.
Oh, God, yeah.
All the kids in my class were kind of treating it like this horror movie. It was this really just knowable thing. It was just, oh man, all this fucked up stuff happens. And then I watched it maybe a few years later, and
Mm.
it scared the hell out of me. And I'm wondering if it had more to
Mm.
do with the fact that it had been hyped up that way amongst my classmates. This idea of this is so scary,
It
whereas
does have horror elements though. Like
yeah,
the tracker scene is pretty fucked up.
yeah, because Phil of the Matrix Minute, I go listen to the Matrix Minute. It's finished now, but the Matrix Minute's pretty good.
Ah,
And yeah, I had this discussion with him, and he was surprised about that. And he's 3 years older than me, so he just thought of this as a cool kung fu movie, and that was his entry point to it. Whereas I went into it sort of, this scared little kid just bracing for all this scary stuff, and there is some scary stuff in there, man.
so I have a memory of watching this movie in the cinemas. I enjoyed it, but it was nothing really kind of that stuck in my brain. And then I watched it again with a group of friends, or his uni friends I had at the time. And I think that's when it finally kind of clicked a bit better.
The Matrix, or
The Matrix, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I enjoyed the film, but I don't recall being wowed as
Hmm.
much as I did the next time I watched it. I think it's one of those things where I think I just watched it by myself. There was like nobody in the cinema, and I think some movies you do need an audience, and I think
yeah.
the communal aspect of cinema. That's one of the reasons I love cinema. And even though I watch a lot of movies by myself nowadays, or I drag a friend and go and talk about it in the car.
That's the thing, is we're mostly consuming things at home, at our own leisure, distracted by other things.
Especially this year.
Mm.
COVID's kind of fucked us all up.
Although I'm surprised, I've seen like 6 movies in the cinema this year. I've gone to movies by myself, but because it's Perth, I never actually watch a movie by myself. I don't think I've ever. Oh no, I saw I think versus Predator 2 by myself because I was going out with a mate, and then I called him. It was like, I bought the ticket, so where are you? And he's like, oh, I'm at work. You told me to be here at this time on this day. Oh yeah, no, I forgot. We were like 15.
There was a few years where I was watching movies a lot more communally with, like, say, Perth Island costumers, because we do costume movie groups. That kind of fell away. And I'd try and organize to watch movies with people, and it just became like an absolute clusterfuck because, like,
Yeah.
you go, okay, let's go watch a movie. It's like, oh, I can't, or I'm busy, and it just got to the point where I'm just like going, I'm not asking anyone, I'm just going to go watch movies.
Yeah.
And then I just like, I want to start producing content, so I'm going to start vlogging movies. And I kind of enjoyed doing that.
There's this communal aspect of movies by minute I've certainly gotten into the community. I've gone on other people's podcasts. It's a lot of fun, and it's a really
Yeah.
great way to explore and enjoy media in a world that is so oversaturated with so much content. And people are getting choice paralysis now, like, oh, okay, but I was told that I should watch this show, but then someone else told me I need to watch these other 5 shows, and like your watch list is just years long. And I think I've gotten to the point now where I've just realized it's not about how much. I mean, I try to consume a lot of stuff just to get a very broad sense of where culture is going year after year. But I think it's also very valuable to slow down and really study the things that had an impact on you. And that's why I love Movies by Minute. I love writing it. I love listening to it. I think this is sort of one of the last havens of real cinephiles, that if you want to really delve into this kind of stuff, this is the way to do it.
I must admit, I do admire when there's just people just like, we're just doing one movie at a time, done. There's a certain joy of just being going, okay, I'm just going to consume as much as possible and just talk about it. But when you want to get into the nitty gritty of something, I think good or bad, I think most media deserves some sort of analysis. Aim is just to say, okay, why is this not working?
Yeah, Prometheus, exactly.
Yeah, I was even thinking Prometheus. I was thinking even like something like The Room. Why does not work? I almost in a bit tone-wise on that. Why does not The Room work?
Yeah. I found that so this year I've been learning Japanese. I've been watching a lot more anime. I wasn't really huge into anime. I wasn't a weeb before, but I was just like, I want to delve.
Now.
Yeah, I really want to delve into this new culture. I want to delve into this new aspect of storytelling and see what that has to offer. And at the beginning, I didn't know where to start. So I just sort of watched a heap of pilots. It was a lot of fun, actually. Because they're only 20 minutes each. So each night I'd get through like 8, 10 different pilots. It was like watching a lot of really fun short stories, and sometimes I would go back to them. Others, maybe the pilot was the most interesting thing, but it didn't have much to carry that concept over to a series. But I found after a while that I felt kind of lost. I didn't have this grounding story that I like to come back to. In my life, I've always had... So right now, I guess my whole life revolves around Transformers. Before that, it was Alien, just this particular story that I love to analyze and pick apart and go, well, why does this happen? What happens if you did this? And that, I think we all need that to a degree.
Well, this was something I learned when I was at university, funny enough, more through game design more than... My two courses was game art design and screen and sound. So
it sounded like you said game art, and I was just like, yeah, game art, where you get gay stuff.
Games, art, and design.
Yeah.
If I studied game art, I might be a completely different person. But no. But funny enough, again, this is what I think I've talked about in a previous minute, whereas I don't like a lot of movie analysis that gets taught to a certain degree. I like the tools of movie analysis. I like using the tools of auteur theory, postmodernism, all the critiquing tools. But they teach it like it's gospel. You need to know auteur theory because you need to now analyze everything through the lens of auteur theory. That's the only way you can truly understand a movie is through the auteur. But game design, part of it was just like, play all sorts of games. There's so many different games. Good games, bad games. Play games. Because it's not just a matter of, you're critiquing the look, you're critiquing the feel, you're critiquing gameplay. Just things like that. It's technically a bit more complicated than just watching a movie trying to study a game. But I found going, why does this game not work? And sometimes it can be just as subtle as, this thing is just slightly wrong.
Yeah.
And it can kind of ruin an experience. But sometimes a game could be pretty damn good and this one wrong thing does not make a difference. And I like studying bad games for that reason. I like studying bad media for that reason.
Yeah.
I don't have to like it, but I do think it's worth studying.
Yeah, I think that's more interesting to me than... And I've talked about this before, but when things go wrong, that's more interesting to me than when things go right. Because one of my favorite movies ever is The Fall by Tarsem Singh. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's just absolutely stunning.
I think I've never heard of it.
Gorgeous movie. It's got Lee Pace, and it's about this guy. He's a stuntman in the 1920s, and he gets into an accident, and he's in a hospital, and he befriends this little girl, and he starts telling her this fantastic story, and you go into her imagination, and it is just the most breathtaking, fantastic world you've ever seen.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. Costumes are done by Aiko Ishioka, who did the costumes for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Wow. So it's a very high fashion, high fantasy take on everything. While I do find it inspirational and just this beautiful escape, at the same time, I've never really gone, I want to write fan fiction about it. I want to write a video essay. I want to go into real depths about why this movie worked, because it just does. What are you gonna... A plus on everything. That doesn't give me a lot to work with. Whereas, again, watching something like shitty RoboCop, the remake, it's just, what? Why? Why would you...
Why does this not work? I think
getting upset about something can sometimes be more fun.
Yeah, I find RoboCop the remake compelling because part of me is just like going, how could you botch this?
Yeah.
I don't hate the movie as much as I hate other movies, but part of me is just there going, you have a template. You have this great movie. Again, this is also why I subscribe to the idea of you should not remake good films. Remake bad films. Remake failed media. There's great examples of failed media that have been remade and are...
We could have just basically gotten rid of all 5 of those Transformers movies and then just started with Bumblebee.
Yeah. I mean, it pretty much was a soft reboot.
It really was.
And it was awesome.
I love it so much. I just suddenly remembered someone on Reddit said that they were drinking at a bar. So it was a guy with his female friend, and they'd had a bit to drink, and Bumblebee was playing on the TV in the background. And drunkenly, she's just like, I would fuck the shit out of Optimus Prime. And he's just like, whoa, how would that happen? And she went silent. She went, I have my ways.
That's what the exhaust pipe's for.
I read it this morning and I cannot stop thinking about it. And then the guy goes up to the bartender, like, so she can't hear, and he's like, "My friend just said this," and again the bartender pauses and goes, "But how would she?" I know, right? I know.
So there is a thing called teledildonics.
Sorry.
It's mostly used for virtual sex, but again, technology.
There you go. Never say never.
Computer-controlled sex toys. There you go.
Well, okay, Transformers Prime Soundwave has tentacles. I'm just saying, if anyone can do it.
Yeah, so obviously, Soundwave was made in Japan.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Oh, I think we've gone completely off the rails.
Oh yeah,
at this
I think I'm done. I think I have gone completely off track. That's all my
we
notes.
managed to take a boring minute and, well, kind of pervert it, but also we
Talk about robots fucking. I mean, that's generally how every conversation devolves with me. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say no. This is all about world building, and if the world building involves pornography, I'm down for it.
Yeah. You think anyone wants to fuck RoboCop?
There's got to be somebody out there who wants to fuck RoboCop.
You got it right, because it's like
You know what?
everything's a fetish.
I don't have to post this, but you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Yes, Rule 34 RoboCop. What the fuck? Why is me? I am so dirty because I ended another episode talking about voice actors fucking, and now I'm talking about RoboCop fucking, and I don't know personally what is wrong with me.
Okay, there is there's only one page of RoboCop porn on paheel.net, but there is at least, let me just see, there's about 42 images there of varying quality and characters, and there's a photo that I'm looking at that can only describe as dad ass.
I deliberately seek
Rule 63 as well.
Oh yeah, I deliberately seek out Rule 34 Transformers because it is buck wild. It is. Oh my god, I have seen shit you people would not believe. I have seen. Yeah, the speech. I can't remember the whole speech, but anyway.
Sorry, just this one thing. It's just called RoboCock.
RoboCop. Yeah.
RoboCop with a dick and balls.
I hope my neighbors heard that. Oh my god.
And on that bombshell.
Yeah, I think that about covers it. You're welcome, audience. We are consummate professionals. RoboCop.
And the thing is, we didn't even do this on the all-nude special.
I know.
That was tasteful compared. So before we devolve into even more giggles, would you like to tell our fellow viewers where we can find you?
Alright, get your butts to my page, traviandesigns.com, where you can find Prometheus by a Minute, and then Covenant Minute should be out soon. I just got to do the last few episodes of Prometheus. I swear, it's got to be done soon.
Take your time. Make it good.
Yes. Legacy Minute you can get on patreon.com/traviandesigns. And yeah, that's all the important things.
Check me out on OnlyFans and...
Yep. Still trying to sponsor your beard.
Oh, I might actually get that done now.
We keep coming back to this stupid idea. Like, may as well.
Stupid joke. It's a stupid joke.
Hell yeah.
You can find me. Just Google Fanboy Crossing. I have YouTube. Also, I do Kung Pao Enter the Minute. Just check out the Facebooks and the YouTubes. I have Patreon and Ko-Fi, but I'll put out the same thing as I said last time. You don't have to give me money. Share and enjoy. Just share this along. This episode might not be for small children, but
yeah, probably. I mean, it's an R-rated movie, so we can say what the fuck.
This movie does have a little bit of sex in it.
Yeah,
it's called I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah, and if
which with
you
inflation is pretty cheap.
Want to go over to 60 Seconds to Comply on Facebook, give that a like. Also, We're on Instagram and Twitter, and it's all under the same name. So
just look for us, share it along, like, comment, do all those lovely groovy things the algorithms like, and look,
Groovy.
just help us boost our audience. And that's really all I'm really asking for. And also go like Kung Pao into the minute because I've been working my ass off on that.
It's good stuff.
So until next time, make sure you have safe search on.
Robocock.